If you want dinner, lick it off the floor, my son-in-law mocked me after knocking my plate down while making a toast at dinner. The entire room went silent. 20 of his wealthy investors watched as the food stained my only good suit. I did not yell. I did not cry. I simply stood up, adjusted my coat, looked him in the eye, and said 3 words that left him completely terrified. The next day, I did something even worse. My name is Archie King. To my son-in-law Brad, I am just a retired postman driving a rusted Ford truck. He thinks I am a charity case he has to tolerate. He has no idea that the mansion he lives in belongs to a trust I control. He has no idea that the company he is trying to impress was founded by me 40 years ago. And he certainly has no idea that the credit card he just tried to use to pay for his arrogance is about to be declined. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth. The crystal chandelier above the dining table cost more than the house I grew up in. We were in the Hamptons, sitting in a dining room that smelled of fresh lilies and old money. Brad sat at the head of the table, radiating the kind of arrogance that only comes from people who spend money they have not earned. He was wearing a tuxedo that was too tight and a watch that was too big. I sat at the far end of the table near the kitchen door. I was wearing my gray suit, the one I bought at Sears 5 years ago. It was clean, but the elbows were shining from wear. Beside me, my daughter Caroline kept her head down. She looked tired. Her designer dress could not hide the fact that she had lost too much weight recently. She nervously arranged her silverware, trying to make herself invisible. Brad was holding court. He had a glass of champagne in one hand, and he was gesturing wildly with the other, a phone. He was telling a story about a real estate deal he supposedly closed last week. I knew for a fact he had not closed it because I read the financial reports of every major transaction in the state, but I said nothing. I just cut my chicken and tried to eat quietly. "You have to be a shark in this business," Brad announced, his voice booming off the marble walls. "You eat or you get eaten. That is why I am sitting here, and the losers are out there." The guests laughed politely. They were a mix of potential investors and local socialites, people Brad was desperate to impress. He needed their money. I could smell his desperation under his expensive cologne. He had leveraged everything he had on a new development project that was currently stalled. He needed $2 million by Monday, or he was finished. I reached for my water glass. My hand shook slightly. It was a tremor I had developed recently, not from age, but from holding back my anger for too long. My elbow bumped my fork. It clattered onto my porcelain plate. The sound was not loud, but in that room it sounded like a gunshot. Brad stopped talking mid-sentence. The silence that followed was instant and suffocating. He turned his head slowly to look at me. His face flushed with irritation. "Archie," Brad said, using my first name without any respect. "Can you not disrupt my dinner for 5 minutes?" "I am sorry, Brad," I said quietly, reaching to pick up the fork. It slipped. He did not let it go. He stood up, swaying slightly. He had been drinking since noon. He walked down the length of the table. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Caroline reached out and touched his arm. "Brad, please," she whispered. "Don't." He shook her off like she was a fly. He stopped right behind my chair. He loomed over me. "You are embarrassing me," Brad hissed. "I invite these important people here. I pay for this food. I let you sit at my table, and you make noise like a clumsy child." I gripped the edge of the table, the edge of Taozi. I realized then that he wanted a show. He wanted to demonstrate his dominance to his investors. He wanted to show them he was the alpha male who could kick a dog and make it whimper. "I am just eating my dinner, Brad," I said, keeping my voice even. "Go back to your seat." That was the wrong thing to say. His eyes narrowed. He grabbed the edge of my plate. "You want your dinner?" he asked. With a violent jerk, he flipped the plate. The chicken, the potatoes, and the heavy porcelain crashed onto the marble floor. Sauce splattered onto my shoes. The noise was deafening. A piece of the plate spun and hit the leg of the investor sitting next to me. There was a collective gasp from the room. Caroline covered her mouth with her hand. "If you want dinner, lick it off the floor," Brad shouted, pointing at the mess. "That is where you belong, Archie. On the floor. In fact, this floor is cleaner than that rat-hole apartment you live in. Maybe you should thank me." He looked around the room expecting applause. He expected them to laugh, but nobody laughed. They looked down at their plates or studied the ceiling. Even these sharks knew there was a line, and Brad had just sprinted across it. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my mind was crystal clear. It was a clarity I had not felt in years. For 5 years, I had played the part of the poor, retired father-in-law. I did it because I wanted Caroline to have a normal life. I wanted to see if Brad could build something on his own without my shadow looming over him. I had tolerated his insults. I had tolerated his financial incompetence. But I would not tolerate this. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor. I stood up. I am 6 feet tall, and even at 70, I still have the broad shoulders of a man who used to load cargo ships before he owned them. I took my napkin and calmly wiped a speck of sauce from my sleeve. I looked at Caroline. She was crying silently, tears ruining her makeup. She did not look at me. She was too ashamed. Then I looked at Brad. He was smirking, waiting for me to apologize or to bend down and clean it up. "Lease is terminated," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. Brad frowned, confusion clouding his drunk eyes. "What are you babbling about, old man? Sit down." I did not repeat myself. I did not explain. I turned and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Brad yelled after me. "You walk out that door, Archie, and do not bother coming back. You hear me? I am done supporting you." I kept walking. I passed the shocked guests. I passed the catering staff who were staring with wide eyes. I walked out the front door of the mansion I had bought 5 years ago under the name of a shell company. I walked past Brad's leased BMW and Caroline's Mercedes. I climbed into my 2005 Ford F-150. The engine roared to life with a familiar rattle. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Brad in the window, gesticulating wildly to his guests, trying to spin the moment into a joke. He had no idea that the roof over his head was about to disappear. He had no idea that the ground he was standing on had just shifted. I did not drive back to my small apartment in Queens. That life ended the moment that plate hit the floor. I drove west toward the city. The lights of the highway blurred as I formulated the next steps. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was not sadness. It was relief. The masquerade was over. I pulled my old flip phone from the glove box. I dialed a number I had not called in 6 months. It rang once. O'Malley, speaking a sharp voice, answered. "It is Archie," I said. The tone on the other end changed instantly. It went from professional to alert. "Mr. King, it has been a while. Is everything all right?" "Activate the King protocol," I said. "Freeze all subsidiary accounts attached to the Sterling household, and O'Malley, prepare the eviction notice." There was a brief pause. O'Malley was the best lawyer in New York. He was a former federal prosecutor who ate sharks like Brad for breakfast. He did not ask why. He knew I never made moves without a reason. "Consider it done, Mr. King, and the investment meeting scheduled for tomorrow regarding Mr. Sterling's project." "Kill it," I said. "Tell the board the chairman has exercised his veto power. Reason due to ethical concerns regarding the principal partner." "Understood. Where will you be staying?" I looked at the skyline of Manhattan approaching in the distance. The Pierre. Book the presidential. I hung up. I drove the truck right up to the entrance of the Pierre Hotel on 5th Avenue. A doorman in a pristine uniform stepped forward, his face set in a polite mask, ready to tell the driver of this old truck to move along. Then he saw me step out. He saw the face he had served for 20 years before I went into my self-imposed exile. His eyes went wide. "Mr. King." "Good evening, Henry," I said, tossing him the keys to the Ford. "Keep her close. I might need to haul some trash later." "Welcome home, Sir," Henry said, signaling for the bellhops who swarmed the truck as if it were a Rolls-Royce. I walked through the gold revolving doors. The lobby manager stopped in his tracks. He rushed over, bypassing a famous actress who was checking in. "Mr. King, we did not know you were coming. We would have prepared the suite." "It is fine," I said. "Just get me a bottle of the 1982 Bordeaux and a steak. Rare. And get me a secure line to the bank." As I rode the elevator to the penthouse, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I saw the stain on my cheap suit. I saw the gray hair. But the tired old postman was gone. Archibald King, the man who built a shipping empire from a single tugboat, was back, and he was very angry. The phone in the suite rang at exactly 11:15 that night. I knew who it was. I was sitting in a leather armchair, looking out at Central Park, holding a glass of wine that cost more than Brad's car payments. I picked up the receiver and held it away from my ear. "What did you do, you crazy old man?" Brad was screaming so loud, the distortion crackled. "Hello, Brad," I said calmly, taking a sip of wine. "Don't play games with me. The catering manager is here. He just tried to run my card for the final payment. $15,000. It was declined." "Declined, Archie." "That sounds inconvenient," I said. "Inconvenient," Brad shouted. "It is humiliating." I tried Caroline's card. Declined. I tried the emergency card. Declined. "They are saying the guarantor put a freeze on the accounts. You are the guarantor on Caroline's starter accounts from years ago. What did you tell the bank?" "I told them the truth, Brad. I told them I was no longer confident in the borrower's ability to pay." "You can't do this," he screamed. "I have investors here. They are watching me argue with the waiter. Fix it. Call the bank right now and fix it, or so help me God. I will throw your stuff out on the street tonight." "You already threw my dinner on the floor, Brad," I said. "I think we are past threats. Archie, listen to me. I need this night to go perfectly. If I don't pay, they are going to call the cops. Do you want your daughter to see her husband arrested over a catering bill?" I paused. I thought about Caroline. I thought about how she looked down when he insulted me. I thought about how she let him isolate her from her friends, how she let him spend her trust fund, how she became a shadow of the vibrant girl I raised. She needed to see this. She needed to see him fail. "She has seen worse," I said. "She sees you every day." "You are senile," Brad spat. "You are a bitter, confused old man. Tomorrow morning I am taking Caroline to the bank and we are going to override you. We are going to take legal guardianship, Archie. You obviously can't handle your own affairs anymore." I almost laughed. He was falling right into the trap. He thought he was fighting a skirmish, but he had just walked into a minefield. "You can try Brad," I said. "But right now you have a bill to pay. I suggest you start washing dishes." I hung up the phone. I unplugged it from the wall. I finished my wine and went to sleep in the finest bed in New York while my son-in-law faced the music. The next morning I woke up at 6. I did not need an alarm. My body was humming with adrenaline. I ordered coffee and a newspaper. I did not look at the missed calls on my cell phone. There were dozens of them. At 8 o'clock I put on a fresh suit that O'Malley had sent over. It was a Brioni tailored perfectly. I tied the silk tie. I looked in the mirror. The transformation was complete. The disguise was off. I checked my email on the secure tablet O'Malley had provided. The report from the private investigator was at the top. I had commissioned it months ago, hoping I would never have to use it. I opened it. It was worse than I thought. Brad wasn't just bad with money. He was a criminal. He had been forging Caroline's signature on loan documents. He had been siphoning money from the construction loans to pay for his gambling debts in Atlantic City. And he had a second apartment in the city listed under a woman's name I did not recognize. I felt a cold fury settle in my stomach. This wasn't just about disrespect anymore. This was about saving my daughter from a predator. I called O'Malley. "Is the meeting set?" I asked. "Yes," Mr. King O'Malley replied. "Brad Sterling is scheduled to meet with the King Logistics Investment Board at 10 a.m. He thinks he is getting the $2 million to save his project. He believes the angel investor is finally signing the check. Does he know who the angel investor is?" "No, sir. He thinks it is a foreign consortium. He has no idea King Logistics is your holding company." "Good," I said. "Let him go to the meeting. Let him think he has won, and then crush him." I hung up and went downstairs. My truck was waiting. I drove toward the financial district. I wanted to be close when the bomb went off. Brad arrived at his office at 9:30. I knew this because I had access to the security cameras in the building which I owned. He looked terrible. He was wearing the same tuxedo from the night before minus the tie. His eyes were bloodshot. He must have spent the night arguing with the caterers or trying to find money. He stormed past the receptionist. "Get me coffee," he barked. "And if it is cold, like yesterday, you are fired." He went into his office and slammed the door. He was pacing. I watched him on the feed on my phone. He was making call after call, probably trying to borrow money from friends to cover the catering check he likely bounced last night. At 10 o'clock his phone rang. It was the call he had been waiting for. It was the call from the King Logistics Board. I watched him answer. He put on his fake business voice. He smoothed his hair. "Gentlemen," he said, "I am ready to finalize the details. This project is going to be a goldmine for all of us." I could not hear the other side of the call, but I knew exactly what was being said. My Vice President Sarah was delivering the message I had scripted for her. "Mr. Sterling," Sarah was saying, "we have completed our final due diligence. We have found significant discrepancies in your accounting. Furthermore, our chairman has personally reviewed the file." Brad froze. "Chairman?" he asked. "What chairman?" "The chairman of King Logistics." Sarah continued. "He has decided to withdraw the offer effective immediately. He cited ethical concerns regarding the principal partner." "Ethical concerns," Brad shouted into the phone. "What are you talking about? I am a pillar of this community. Who is this chairman? Put him on the line." "The chairman does not speak to applicants," Sarah said coldly. "The deal is dead, Mr. Sterling. Do not contact us again." Brad threw the phone across the room. It smashed against the wall. He kicked his desk. He screamed. He had just lost his lifeline. Without that $2 million, his construction loans would be called in. He would be bankrupt in a week. I turned off the video feed. Phase 1 was complete. He was desperate now. And a desperate man makes mistakes. I knew exactly what his next move would be. He had threatened it last night. He would go after my money. He thought I was a retired postman with a pension and maybe $200,000 in savings from selling my old house. He thought that money was his safety net. He was going to try to take guardianship. He was going to try to declare me incompetent. I drove my truck to the small local bank branch in Queens where I kept my personal checking account, the one Caroline knew about. I parked across the street and waited. Sure enough, an hour later, Brad's BMW screeched into the parking lot. He jumped out, dragging Caroline with him. She looked terrified. She was wearing sunglasses, probably to hide swollen eyes. Brad was moving fast. He was manic. He was pulling her toward the bank doors. He needed cash, and he needed it now. I watched them go inside. I waited 2 minutes. Then I opened the door of my truck and walked across the street. I didn't rush. I walked with the steady pace of an executioner. Inside the bank, Brad was yelling at the branch manager, Mr. Henderson. "I am telling you, he is unfit," Brad was shouting, slamming his hand on the counter. "He disappeared last night. He is wandering the streets. We are his next of kin. We need to freeze his accounts to protect him, and we need to make an emergency withdrawal to cover his medical expenses." Mr. Henderson looked terrified. He was a nice man who had handled my modest checking account for years. He did not know about my other life either. "Sir, without a court order, I cannot," Henderson stammered. "We are filing the order today," Brad interrupted. "But this is an emergency. My wife here is his daughter. Caroline, tell him." Caroline was shaking. "I don't know, Brad." "Maybe we should wait. Tell him," Brad hissed, grabbing her arm hard enough to leave a bruise. "That is enough," I said from the doorway. Brad spun around. He saw me standing there in my tailored Brioni suit. For a second, he looked confused. He was used to seeing me in flannel. The suit threw him off, but his arrogance quickly took over. "There he is," Brad shouted, pointing at me. "Look at him. He thinks he is a millionaire. He is wearing a costume. He is having a psychotic break. Grab him." Mr. Henderson looked at me, then back at Brad. "Mr. King, you are okay." "I am fine, Mr. Henderson," I said, walking forward. "But I believe this man is attempting to rob your bank." "Rob?" Brad laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "I am trying to save your money, you old fool." I stopped in front of him. I looked at Caroline. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red. She looked at my suit, then at my face. She saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. She saw her father, the protector. "Caroline," I said gently, "did you authorize him to come here?" She looked at Brad. He was glaring at her, daring her to speak. I, she stammered. "He dragged her here," I said, turning to the manager. "Mr. Henderson, I would like to see the access logs for my account. Specifically, the joint access I granted my daughter 10 years ago." "Actually," Mr. King Henderson said, looking nervous, "we have had some unusual activity recently, several withdrawals via online transfer." Brad went pale. "How much?" I asked. $50,000 over the last 2 years, Henderson said. "Transferred to an account under the name Sterling Development." The room went silent. Brad had not just been waiting for me to die. He had been stealing from me while I was still alive. He had forged the online access. "You stole my retirement money, Brad," I asked, my voice low. "It was a loan," Brad sputtered, backing away. "I was going to pay it back. It was for the business." "Caroline knew." "I did not," Caroline whispered. She looked at her husband with horror. "You told me that money came from your bonus." "He lied to you, Caroline," I said. "He lies about everything." Brad's face twisted into a snarl. "So what?" "It is 50 grand. I spend that on dinner. Who cares about your pathetic pennies, old man? When I get my investment funding, I will throw the money in your face." "You aren't getting the funding, Brad," I said. He froze. "How do you know that?" "Because I am the investor," I said. Brad blinked. "What?" "King Logistics," I said. "King. My name is Archie King. Did you never wonder where the name came from?" "No," Brad whispered. "No. That is a billion-dollar company. You deliver mail." "I retired from my own company to live a quiet life," I said. "I wanted to see if you were a man worthy of my daughter. You failed." "You are lying," Brad screamed. He lunged at me. Before he could touch me, a hand grabbed his shoulder. It was a large security guard. "Sir, you need to step back," the guard said. O'Malley stepped out from the manager's office. He had been waiting there as I instructed. He was holding a file. "Mr. Sterling O'Malley," said his voice like gravel. "I am Archibald King's attorney. We have the digital footprint proving you accessed Mr. King's accounts without authorization. That is wire fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. The police are on their way." Brad looked around wildly. He looked at Caroline. "Baby, tell them. Tell them you gave me permission." Caroline stared at him. She looked at the man who had humiliated her father, who had stolen from him, who had dragged her into this nightmare. "I never gave you permission," she said. Her voice was shaking, but it was clear. Brad's face crumbled. He turned and ran. He shoved the security guard and bolted out the door. "Let him go," I said to the guard. "He has nowhere to run." I turned to Caroline. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "I am so sorry, Dad," she cried. "I didn't know. I am so sorry." I held her tight. I smoothed her hair just like I did when she was a little girl. "It is over now, sweetheart," I said. "Let's go home." But the war wasn't over yet. Brad was a rat, and rats bite when they are cornered. He wasn't going to disappear quietly. He was heading back to the only place he felt safe. The mansion in the Hamptons. My mansion. I looked at O'Malley. "Execute the eviction," I said. "I want him on the curb before sunset." O'Malley nodded. "The sheriff is already en route." I walked Caroline out to my truck. I opened the door for her. "Where are we going?" she asked, wiping her eyes. "To get your things," I said. "You are not staying in that house with him, not for one more night." We drove in silence for a while. Caroline stared out the window, watching the city pass by. "Dad," she said softly, do you really own King Logistics?" "I do," I said. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because money changes people, Caroline," I said. "I saw what it did to my friends. I saw what it did to your mother's family. I wanted you to be loved for who you are, not for what you can buy. I thought Brad might be different if he thought we were normal folks." "He never loved me," she whispered. "He loved the idea of me. And when he couldn't control me, he used me." We pulled up to the gates of the Hamptons estate. There were 2 police cruisers in the driveway. The front door was open. Brad was on the front lawn screaming at a police officer. He was holding a golf club, waving it around. "This is my house," he was yelling. "You can't kick me out. I have rights, squatters' rights." The sheriff, a man I had known for 20 years, stepped forward. "Mr. Sterling, this isn't a squat. You signed a lease agreement 5 years ago. A lease that clearly states the owner can terminate tenancy immediately upon evidence of criminal activity or failure to pay the nominal rent. You haven't paid the $1 rent in 6 months. And we have a report of assault." "Assault," Brad screamed. "Who did I assault?" "You assaulted me," I said, stepping out of the truck. Brad spun around. He saw me. He saw Caroline. "Caroline, tell them to leave," he shouted. "Tell them this is our house." Caroline stepped out of the truck. She stood next to me. She looked at the man she had married. He looked pathetic. A small man in a big suit yelling at the world because he couldn't cheat his way out of this one. "It isn't our house, Brad," she said. "It never was." Brad's face turned purple. "You traitor! You useless!" He raised the golf club and took a step toward her. The sheriff didn't hesitate. He tackled Brad to the ground. The golf club flew into the bushes. 2 deputies swarmed him. I heard the click of handcuffs. Brad was screaming obscenities into the grass. "Get him off my property," I said. They dragged him to the cruiser. He was kicking and spitting. As they shoved him into the back seat, he locked eyes with me. "This isn't over, old man," he screamed. "I will sue you. I will destroy you. I will tell everyone who you really are." "You do that, Brad," I said. "You tell them." They drove him away. The silence returned to the estate. The ocean breeze rustled the trees. Caroline looked at the house. "I don't want anything from inside," she said. Just my clothes and my mother's jewelry. We can burn the rest if you want, I said. She managed a weak smile. Let's just donate it. We spent the afternoon packing her life into boxes. It was sad work, but it was necessary. By sunset, the house was empty of everything that mattered. But Brad wasn't done. I knew him. He was a narcissist. He couldn't accept defeat. He would try one last Hail Mary. 2 days later, I saw the announcement. The State Entrepreneur Gala. It was the biggest event of the year for the business community. Brad had been bragging for months that he was going to be the keynote speaker, that he was going to be on the cover of the magazine. I knew he was out on bail. I knew he would be there. He would try to find a new victim, a new investor. He would try to spin a story about how he was the victim of a crazy father-in-law. I called O'Malley. Get me a table at the gala, I said. Front row. But sir, the tickets are sold out. Buy the event, I said. Become the diamond sponsor. King Logistics needs a little publicity. O'Malley laughed. Yes, sir. The night of the gala, the ballroom was packed. Everyone who was anyone was there. Brad was there too. He was working the room, desperate and sweaty. He was telling anyone who would listen that he was about to launch a lawsuit that would make him millions. He didn't see me. I was backstage. When the time came for the keynote, Brad rushed the stage. He wasn't the scheduled speaker anymore. The organizers had tried to cancel him, but he grabbed the microphone before anyone could stop him. Ladies and gentlemen, he shouted, his voice cracking. You all know me. I am a victim of a massive fraud orchestrated by my wife's family. The crowd murmured. He was making a scene. They tried to ruin me, he yelled, pointing at the camera that was live streaming the event. But I am still standing. I am looking for a partner who believes in justice, who believes in vision. The lights in the ballroom suddenly dimmed. The giant screen behind Brad flickered. The logo he had projected there, Sterling Development, disappeared. It was replaced by a massive golden lion. The logo of King Logistics. A voice boomed over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host and diamond sponsor, the founder of King Logistics, Archibald King. Brad froze. He looked at the screen. He looked at the wings of the stage. I walked out. I was wearing my tuxedo. I walked to the center of the stage. Brad looked like he had seen a ghost. He couldn't move. I reached out and took the microphone from his hand. He didn't resist. Thank you for that entertainment, I said to the crowd. I turned to Brad. The spotlight hit us both. You are looking for a partner, Brad, I asked. He couldn't speak. He was shaking. I am afraid you are unemployed, I said. You see those 3 subsidiary companies you consult for? I bought them this morning. You are fired. The crowd gasped. And regarding your lawsuit, I continued. You might want to save your money for a criminal defense attorney. Because while you were giving this speech, the forensic accountants finished their audit of the project funds. You embezzled $200,000, Brad. I pointed to the side of the stage. 2 police officers stepped out from the shadows. Brad looked at me. His eyes were wide with terror. He looked at the crowd. He saw their faces. He saw the disgust. He saw the end of his life. Archie, please, he whispered. The microphone caught it. Please, bail me out. I will do anything. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had mocked me, who had hurt my daughter, who had thrown my food on the floor. You want me to bail you out? I asked. He nodded frantically, tears streaming down his face. Yes, yes. I leaned in close. Lick it off the floor, I said. I dropped the microphone. It hit the stage with a thud that echoed like a gavel. I walked off stage as the police took him away. I didn't look back. 6 months later, I was sitting on the porch of my old house in Queens. It wasn't a mansion, but it was home. The sun was setting over the neighborhood. Caroline was inside cooking dinner. She was laughing on the phone with a friend. It was a sound I hadn't heard in years. She was working for the charitable foundation I had started. She was happy. I took a sip of my beer, a cheap domestic. It tasted better than any champagne. People say money can't buy happiness. They are right. But money can buy a broom to sweep the trash out of your life. And to me, that is close enough. I sat in the back of my darkened SUV parked 2 blocks away from the Sterling Development offices, monitoring the security feed on my tablet. I own the building. I bought it through a shell corporation 8 years ago when the market bottomed out. Brad had always bragged about his prime location in the financial district, about the view from the 30th floor that proved he was a master of the universe. He never knew that every month he wrote a rent check. It was deposited directly into a trust fund I had set up for my future grandchildren. He was a tenant in a cage I had built, and he was about to find out that the lock had just clicked shut. It was 9:15 in the morning. Brad burst through the glass double doors of his suite like a man escaping a fire. He looked terrible. The tuxedo shirt from the night before was unbuttoned at the collar, and his eyes were bloodshot pools of hungover rage. He had likely spent the night in his car or at a cheap motel because he was too cowardly to go home and face Caroline after the catering disaster. He carried the stench of stale champagne and desperation. His receptionist, a young woman named Jessica, looked up from her desk with a tentative smile. She was a good kid working 2 jobs to pay for night school. I had vetted her myself before Brad even interviewed her, ensuring he had competent support, even if he didn't deserve it. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," she said, holding out a stack of messages. Brad didn't even slow down. He slapped the messages out of her hand. They scattered across the polished floor like confetti. "Don't speak to me," he barked, his voice cracking. "Where is my coffee? I told you to have it on my desk by 9. "I am sorry," Sir Jessica stammered, scrambling to pick up the papers. "I was just about to brew a fresh pot because you were late, and I didn't want it to get cold." "Late," Brad screamed, his face turning a violent shade of purple. "You are monitoring my arrival times now. You are judging me. I am the CEO of this company. I answer to no one." He loomed over her. He was projecting all his humiliation from the night before onto this innocent girl. He needed to feel big again. He needed to crush someone because I had crushed him. "You are fired," Brad shouted, pointing at the elevators. "Get your things, get out! If you are not gone in 5 minutes, I am calling security to drag you out." Jessica stood there, stunned, tears welling in her eyes. "But sir, my tuition payment is due next week. I need this job." "Not my problem," Brad spat. "You are incompetent, just like my father-in-law. Useless dead weight. Get out." I watched on the screen, my knuckles white as I gripped the tablet. He had just fired the only person in that office who actually did any work. I made a mental note to have O'Malley contact Jessica within the hour to offer her a position at King Logistics with a full scholarship. But for now, I let the scene play out. Brad stormed into his private office and slammed the door so hard the glass walls rattled. He went straight to his liquor cabinet, pouring himself 3 fingers of scotch. It was 9:20 in the morning. He downed it in one gulp and slammed the glass onto his mahogany desk. He started pacing. I could see him muttering to himself, rehearsing his lines. He checked his reflection in the window, smoothing back his disheveled hair, trying to put the mask of success back on. He checked his watch. Then he checked his phone. Then he checked his watch again. He was waiting for the call. The call from the angel investor. The call from KL Holdings. He believed that at 10 o'clock sharp, a representative from a mysterious European consortium was going to wire $2 million into his operating account. In his delusional mind, that money was already his. It was the magic wand that would fix the bounced catering check, pay his past due lease on the Hamptons house, and silence the creditors who were breathing down his neck. At 9:58, he sat down in his leather executive chair. He put on a headset. He composed his face into a smile that looked painful. He was ready to beg, ready to charm, ready to lie. The phone on his desk rang at exactly 10 o'clock. I watched him answer. I switched the audio feed to listen in. "Brad Sterling speaking," he said, his voice dropping an octave, trying to sound commanding. "To whom am I speaking?" "Mr. Sterling, this is Sarah Jenkins from KLO." Sarah was my vice president of operations. She was sitting in my office 3 miles away, following the script I had written for her word for word. Sarah, wonderful to hear from you," Brad said, leaning back and putting his feet up on the desk. "I trust the paperwork is in order. My team is ready to receive the wire transfer. We have crews standing by to break ground on the condos immediately." There was a pause on the line. It was a long, heavy silence that made Brad take his feet off the desk and sit up straight. "Mr. Sterling," Sarah said, her voice icy and professional. "We have completed our final due diligence review regarding the Sterling Heights project." And Brad asked, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. "And we are declining the investment opportunity," Sarah stated flatly. "The offer is officially rescinded." Brad laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Excuse me. I think there is a bad connection. We have a term sheet." We shook hands. The chairman gave me his word through his intermediaries. "The chairman has personally intervened," Sarah said. "He has reviewed your file this morning. Specifically, he reviewed the incident report from last night regarding your conduct at a private residence in the Hamptons." Brad went pale. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. How does he know about that?" "That was a private dinner. KL Holdings values character above collateral." "Mr. Sterling," Sarah continued, "the chairman was informed that you assaulted a senior citizen and destroyed private property. Furthermore, our auditors have discovered irregularities in your previous construction loans." "That is a lie," Brad screamed, standing up and slamming his fist on the desk. "Who told you that? Was it Archie? Did that old lunatic call you? He is a nobody. He delivers mail. You are going to listen to a postman over a developer." "Mr. Sterling," Sarah said, cutting him off. "The decision is final. We do not do business with individuals who lack basic moral fiber. We are also notifying the other partners in the consortium. You will find no capital here. Do not contact us again." The line went dead. Brad stood there holding the headset, the dial tone buzzing in the empty office. He looked like he had been hit by a truck. The $2 million was gone. The lifeline was cut. Then the rage took over. He let out a primal scream that echoed through the empty suite. He grabbed the expensive crystal decanter of scotch and hurled it at the wall. It shattered, spraying amber liquid and glass shards everywhere. He didn't stop there. He swept his arm across his desk, sending his computer, his awards, and his framed photos of Caroline crashing to the floor. He kicked his chair over. He punched the drywall, leaving a hole in the plaster. "You are ruining me," he screamed at the empty room. "Everyone is against me. It is not fair. I am a genius. I deserve this." He collapsed onto the floor, sitting amidst the wreckage of his ego. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his cell phone. He opened his banking app. I zoomed in with the camera. I could see the screen over his shoulder. He checked his business account. The balance was negative $4,000. The catering check had hit early that morning and bounced, triggering overdraft fees. He checked his personal account. Negative $200. He checked his credit cards. All of them showed the same message. Account suspended. Contact guarantor. He was insolvent. He didn't have enough money to buy lunch, let alone pay the $15,000 catering bill that the police were likely investigating right now. He didn't have the money to pay the rent on this office, which was 10 days overdue. He sat there staring at the red numbers on his screen. The reality of his situation was finally crashing down on him. He wasn't a millionaire. He wasn't a mogul. He was a fraud who had run out of road. Then a look of dark realization crossed his face. He wiped the sweat from his forehead. His eyes narrowed. He wasn't looking at the past anymore, he was looking for a way out. A survival instinct kicked in, the instinct of a parasite looking for a new host. He scrolled through his contacts until he landed on a name. Caroline. He didn't call her. Instead, he opened his photos. He scrolled years back to a photo of me and Caroline standing in front of my old house. He zoomed in on the house. It was modest, but he knew I owned it outright. He knew I had a pension. He knew I had a life savings account that I had barely touched in decades. He thought that account held maybe $200,000. To a man who owed millions, it was a drop in the bucket, but to a drowning man, it was a life raft. I saw him form the plan. I saw the gears turning in his desperate mind. He couldn't get the millions from the investors, so he would take the thousands from the old man. He would rationalize it. He would tell himself I owed him. He would tell himself I was senile and he was just protecting the family assets. He stood up, dusting the glass off his pants. He smoothed his hair again. The mania was back in his eyes. He grabbed his keys. He didn't look at the destruction he had caused. He walked out of the office, leaving the shattered glass and the hole in the wall behind him. I watched him go. I picked up my phone and dialed O'Malley. "He is on the move," I said. He took the bait. "He is going for the savings account." "Is the trap set?" O'Malley asked. "The bank manager is expecting him," I said, "and the police are on standby in the break room." I started the engine of my truck. I pulled out into traffic, keeping a safe distance behind Brad's BMW. He was driving fast, weaving through traffic, heading toward Caroline. He was going to use my daughter to steal my money. He had no idea that he wasn't driving toward a payout. He was driving toward the end of his life as a free man. I parked my truck down the street from the Hamptons estate and pulled up the security feed on my tablet. I had installed the cameras years ago, not to spy on them, but to ensure my daughter was safe. For a long time, I had only seen the mundane sadness of a loveless marriage. Today, I was watching a crime in progress. Brad stormed into the house like a hurricane. He didn't even close the front door. He walked straight into the living room where Carolyn was sitting on the edge of the sofa. She was still wearing her pajamas. Her eyes were swollen. She had probably been crying all morning about the scene at the dinner party. She stood up when she saw him. She looked hopeful. She was waiting for him to tell her it was all fixed. She wanted him to tell her that the catering bill was paid, that the investors were happy, that life was going back to normal. Brad did not give her that. He threw his car keys onto the glass coffee table hard enough to chip it. He loosened his tie and paced around the room, running his hands through his hair like a man on the verge of a breakdown. "It is gone, Caroline," he shouted without looking at her. "The deal, the funding, the future, it is all gone." Caroline put her hand to her mouth. "What? Why?" "I thought the meeting was just a formality." "It was a formality," Brad lied, turning to face her. "Until your father got involved." Caroline blinked. "My father? What did he do?" "He called them," Brad said, his voice dripping with fake incredulity. "He called the investment board this morning. He was raving, Caroline. He told them I was a thief. He told them I was abusing you. He told them wild, paranoid lies. He spooked them. They pulled the offer. $2 million vaporized because your father couldn't keep his mouth shut." I watched the screen, my jaw clenched. The man was a master. He took his own failure, his own criminal negligence, and wrapped it around my neck like a noose. "He wouldn't do that," Carolyn whispered. "He doesn't even know who your investors are. He is just a retired postman." "That is exactly the point," Brad said, walking over to her. "He is confused, Caroline. He is losing it. Think about last night. Who throws a plate of food on the floor at a formal dinner? A sane man doesn't do that." "He didn't throw it," Caroline said quietly. "You knocked it out of his hand, Brad." "I saw you." Brad grabbed her shoulders. He shook her gently, just enough to unsettle her. "Baby, listen to yourself. You are remembering it wrong. He threw it. He was aggressive. He was screaming about leases and terminations. Did that make any sense to you? Did that sound like reality? Caroline looked down. She was doubting her own memory. That was his power. He could rewrite history while looking you in the eye. He is sick, Brad said, softening his voice. It is dementia, Caroline. Early onset. Aggression, paranoia, confusion. It fits all the symptoms. He thinks he is a millionaire one minute and a victim the next. He is a danger to himself. Caroline started to cry. Oh God. Dad. We have to protect him, Brad said, pulling her into a hug. He was looking over her shoulder at the wall, his eyes cold and calculating. We have to make sure he doesn't hurt anyone else. And we have to protect his assets. His assets, Caroline sniffled into his chest. He doesn't have much. Just the savings from the house sale. That is all he has left, Brad said. And in his state he could lose it all. He could give it away to a scammer. He could burn it. We have a responsibility, Caroline. We need to get legal guardianship. Guardianship, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. That seems extreme. Maybe we should just get him to a doctor. There is no time for that. Brad snapped, his patience fraying. He is spiraling. If we don't act today, he could empty his accounts by tomorrow. Do you want your father to die on the street because we were too scared to act? No, Caroline whispered. No, of course not. Then we need to go to the bank, Brad said. We need to freeze his accounts. We need to transfer the funds to a secure account under your name. We will use it to pay for his care. We will get him into a nice facility. A place where he can't hurt anyone. I saw the conflict in Caroline's face. She loved me. She didn't want to lock me away. But she was weak. She had spent 10 years being told she was stupid, being told she needed Brad to navigate the world. She was terrified of making the wrong choice, so she was about to let him make it for her. I don't know, she said. He seemed so lucid last night when he left. He drove himself. He is having moments of clarity mixed with psychosis, Brad insisted. That makes him even more dangerous. Look at what he did to my business. He destroyed our livelihood, Caroline. We are going to lose this house because of him. Do you want to be homeless? Do you want to fail because you couldn't make the hard choice? He was cornering her. He was using fear and guilt as weapons. Okay, she whispered. Okay. If you think it is best. It is the only way, Brad said. Go get your purse. Get your ID. We are going to his bank. The branch in Queens. We are going to save him from himself. He kissed her on the forehead. It was the kiss of a Judas. Caroline turned and walked upstairs to get ready. As soon as she was out of the room, Brad's face changed. The mask of concern dropped. He smiled. It was a cruel, predatory smile. He pumped his fist in the air. He thought he had won. He thought he had just talked his wawans to a $200,000 payday. I turned off the tablet. I started my truck. He wasn't going to save me. He was going to rob me blind and dump me in a state-run facility while he spent my life savings on his gambling debts. He had manipulated my daughter into becoming an accomplice to the theft of her own inheritance. I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. You want to go to the bank? Brad, I said to the empty cab of my truck. Fine. Let's go to the bank. I pulled out into the street. I knew exactly where they were going. And I knew exactly who would be waiting for them. Brad thought he was playing chess with a senile old man. He didn't realize he was playing poker with the house. And the house always wins. I parked my Ford truck around the corner from the bank branch in Queens, ensuring it was out of sight. I wanted Brad to feel confident. I wanted him to walk into that building thinking he was the smartest man in the room. I watched from the sidewalk as his BMW screeched into the handicap spot right in front of the entrance. He didn't have a placard, but Brad Sterling never let laws get in the way of his convenience. He jumped out of the car and practically dragged Caroline toward the glass doors. She looked pale and small in her designer coat, her eyes darting around nervously as if she expected the police to jump out of the bushes. In a way, she wasn't wrong. I gave them a 2-minute head start. I adjusted my tie in the reflection of a shop window, took a deep breath, and walked toward the bank. This was the branch where I had opened my first savings account 50 years ago. The tellers knew me as the nice old man who brought donuts on Fridays. They didn't know I owned the building the bank leased space in. When I entered the lobby, the tension was already thick enough to choke on. Brad was leaning over the counter, his face inches from the young teller's plexiglass shield. "I am telling you it is a medical emergency," Brad was shouting, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "My father-in-law is incapacitated. We need immediate access to his liquid assets to secure his treatment. Why is this so difficult? Do you want him to die because of your bureaucracy?" The teller looked terrified. "Sir, I have explained that without a power of attorney on file." "Get me your manager," Brad interrupted, slamming his hand on the counter. "Get me Henderson, now, Mr. Henderson appeared from the back office right on cue. We had rehearsed this scenario just an hour ago. He smoothed his suit jacket and walked over with a calm, professional expression that I knew was hiding a lot of satisfaction. Mr. Sterling Henderson said, his voice steady. "Please lower your voice. You are disturbing the other customers." "I don't care about your customers," Brad spat, turning his aggression toward the manager. "I care about my wife's father, who is currently suffering a mental break. We need to transfer his savings to a conservatorship account immediately. Here is the paperwork." He thrust a crumpled stack of forms at Henderson. They were legal templates probably downloaded from the internet and filled out in Brad's jagged handwriting. Henderson didn't even look at the papers. "Mr. Sterling, given the sensitivity of this request and the significant amount of funds involved, we cannot handle this at the counter." Brad smirked. "Finally, someone with a brain. Let's go to your office then. Cut the check and we will be out of your hair." Henderson nodded. "Actually, we have prepared the VIP conference room for this meeting. Please follow me." Brad winked at Caroline. "See?" He whispered loud enough for me to hear from the vestibule. "You just have to push these little people. They always fold." Caroline didn't smile. She looked sick. They followed Henderson down the hallway toward the back of the bank. I waited until the heavy oak door of the conference room clicked shut. Then I walked over to the teller. "Hello, Mary," I said quietly. "Mr. King," she gasped. "Oh, thank goodness. That man, he is saying terrible things about you." "I know, Mary," I said, giving her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry. He's about to have a very bad day." I walked down the hallway and stopped in front of the conference room door. I could hear Brad's voice through the wood, arrogant and demanding. I turned the handle and walked in. The room was silent for a second. Brad was standing at the head of the table, his hand resting on a leather portfolio. Caroline was sitting in a corner chair, looking at her hands. Henderson was standing by the window, and sitting at the far end of the table, calm as a statue, was O'Malley. He had a thick file folder open in front of him. Brad spun around when I entered. His eyes widened. "Archie," he said, a sneer curling his lip. "I didn't think you would wander in here." "How did you find us?" "Did you follow us?" I ignored him. I walked over to the empty chair next to O'Malley and sat down. I didn't say a word. I just folded my hands on the table and looked at him. "This is actually perfect," Brad said, letting out a harsh laugh. "You can sign the release forms yourself. It will save us the court fees." "Caroline, give him a pen." Caroline didn't move. She was staring at O'Malley. She recognized him. She had seen him on the news years ago when he was prosecuting mob bosses. "Brad." "Who is this guy?" she whispered. Brad looked at O'Malley dismissively. probably the bank's lawyer. "Look, buddy, we don't need a lecture on protocol. Just give us the money." Mr. Sterling O'Malley said, his voice deep and resonant like a cello. "I do not work for the bank. I am Mr. King's personal counsel." Brad laughed so hard he threw his head back. "Personal counsel? He is a postman. He can't afford a lawyer. What are you, pro bono legal aid?" "I am on retainer," Brad O'Malley said, "and my hourly rate is considerably higher than the balance in your checking account." Brad stopped laughing. He looked from O'Malley to me, then back to O'Malley. The confidence in his eyes flickered. "What is going on here?" Brad demanded. "Why are you here?" "We are here to discuss a withdrawal," O'Malley said, flipping open the file in front of him. "Specifically, a series of withdrawals totaling $50,000 made from Mr. King's retirement fund over the last 24 months. Brad froze. His face went gray. "I don't know what you are talking about," he said, his voice suddenly tight. "We have the transaction logs." O'Malley continued, pulling a sheet of paper from the file and sliding it across the polished table. Every transfer was authorized via a digital signature. The IP address for every single request traces back to a laptop registered to Sterling Development. Caroline stood up. She walked over to the table and looked at the paper. Her hands were shaking. "Brad," she said softly, "these dates. This one is from 2 months ago, the day you said you got a bonus." Brad waved his hand dismissively. "It was a loan, Caroline, I told you. Archie loaned it to me. He forgot. He is senile." "I did not loan you anything, Brad," I said, speaking for the first time. "You did," Brad shouted, pointing a finger at me. "You told me I could use it. You said you wanted to help the business. You are lying because you are confused." O'Malley pulled another document from the file. It was a physical withdrawal slip from 2 years ago. And this Mr. Sterling O'Malley said, "This is a withdrawal slip for $5,000 cash. It was signed in person at this branch." The signature reads, "Caroline Sterling." Caroline picked up the slip. She stared at it for a long time. The room was deadly silent. The hum of the air conditioner sounded like a jet engine. "That is not my signature," she whispered. "What?" Brad snapped. "Of course it is. You signed it. You forgot. You forget things all the time." "No," Caroline said, looking up. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was gaining strength. "I didn't sign this, Brad. Look at the C. I loop my C's. This is sharp. This looks like your handwriting." Brad slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump except O'Malley. "Stop it, Caroline. Stop siding with him. He is trying to frame me. Can't you see that? He is jealous of my success. He wants to destroy us." "Success?" O'Malley asked calmly. "Mr. Sterling, according to our investigation, your business has not turned a profit in 3 years. You are insolvent. You have been funding your lifestyle and your gambling debts by stealing from a pensioner." "It is not stealing if we are family," Brad screamed. "It is all going to be ours anyway. He doesn't need it. He lives like a pauper. Why should that money sit there rotting when I could turn it into millions?" "So you admit you took it?" O'Malley asked, his pen poised over a notepad. "I admit I am smart," Brad yelled. "I admit I did what I had to do to save this family from mediocrity. And you cheap lawyer, you can't touch me. It is a civil matter. It is a family dispute." "Actually," O'Malley said, closing the file, "it is wire fraud, identity theft, and elder financial abuse. Those are felonies, Mr. Sterling. And in the state of New York, elder abuse carries a mandatory minimum sentence." Brad looked at the door. He was calculating the distance. "I am leaving," he said. "Come on, Caroline." Caroline didn't move. She was holding the forged withdrawal slip to her chest like a shield. "I am not going with you," she said. Brad stopped. He turned slowly to look at her. "What did you say?" he hissed. "I said I am not going," Caroline repeated. "You stole from my father. You lied to me. You made me think we were successful, but we were just thieves." "You ungrateful little." Brad stepped toward her, his hand raised. "Sit down," O'Malley barked. The command was so authoritative that Brad instinctively flinched and stepped back. "If you take one more step toward her, Mr. Sterling." O'Malley said, his voice low and dangerous, "I will add assault to the list of charges the district attorney is currently reviewing." Brad looked at me. His eyes were wide and frantic. He looked like a trapped animal. "Archie, please," he said, his voice breaking. "This is crazy." "Jail. You are going to send your son-in-law to jail. Think about the scandal. Think about Caroline." "I am thinking about Caroline," I said. "That is why I am doing this." "I will pay it back," Brad pleaded. "I swear. Just give me time. When the investors come through." "There are no investors, Brad," I said. KL Holdings was the only offer on the table. And I killed it. Brad's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Henderson. He looked at the walls. He realized the walls were closing in. You killed the deal." "I own KL Holdings, Brad." He staggered back until he hit the wall. He slid down it until he was crouching on the floor. He put his head in his hands. "No," he moaned. "No, it isn't possible." O'Malley stood up. He walked over to Brad and handed him a thick envelope. "You have been served, Mr. Sterling," O'Malley said. "This is a formal notice of the civil suit regarding the theft of $50,000. It also contains a restraining order preventing you from coming within 500 feet of Mr. King or his financial assets." Brad stared at the envelope on the floor. He didn't pick it up. "And one more thing," O'Malley said. "The police are waiting in the lobby. They would like to have a word with you regarding the check you wrote to the catering company last night. Writing a bad check over $10,000 is a felony in this jurisdiction." Brad looked up. Tears were streaming down his face, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity. "Caroline, help me," he sobbed. "Don't let them do this." Caroline looked at him. She looked at the man she had spent 10 years trying to please. She saw the pathetic reality beneath the expensive suit. "You did this to yourself, Brad," she said. She walked over to me and took my hand. Her grip was tight. "Let's go, Dad," she said. We walked out of the conference room, leaving Brad sobbing on the floor, with the envelope lying next to him. We walked past the police officers who were heading toward the back. We walked out into the bright afternoon sun. Caroline took a deep breath. She looked at the busy street. "I don't have anywhere to go," she said softly. "He has the house keys, and the car is in his name." I put my arm around her shoulders. "You have a home, Caroline," I said. "You always have a home. And don't worry about the car. I think it is time for an upgrade anyway." She looked at me, and for the first time in a long time she smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. "Who are you, Dad?" she asked. "Really?" "I am just your father," I said. "And right now I am a father who is going to buy his daughter lunch, and we are going to eat it off a table." Brad Sterling drove his BMW back to the Hamptons at 100 miles an hour. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely keep the wheel steady. He screamed at the windshield, screaming at Caroline, screaming at me, screaming at the universe. He had lost the funding. He had lost the bank fight. He had lost his wife. But he told himself he still had the house. The mansion was his fortress. It was the physical proof that he was somebody. As long as he had the keys to the front door, he was still Brad Sterling, the developer. He convinced himself that Caroline would come back. She had nowhere else to go. She would cry for a few hours in her father's run-down apartment, and then she would realize she needed her husband. She needed the lifestyle he provided, even if that lifestyle was currently a house of cards doused in gasoline. He pulled into the long gravel driveway. The sight of the massive white pillars calmed him slightly. It was a beautiful house. It was a symbol of power. He parked the car and walked to the front door. He unlocked it and stepped into the cool, silent foyer. It smelled of expensive candles and sea salt. He went straight to the bar in the living room. He poured a vodka tonic, his third of the day. He paced the floor. "She will be back," he muttered to the empty room. "She has to come back. That old man cannot take care of her. He can barely take care of himself." He took a long drink. The alcohol burned, but it didn't numb the panic rising in his chest. He replayed the scene at the bank. O'Malley. That lawyer. Who was he really? He couldn't be Archie's lawyer. Archie was a retired civil servant. He bought his clothes at thrift stores. He drove a truck that sounded like a lawnmower. "It is a scam," Brad said aloud, slamming his glass down. "That is it. It is a scam. O'Malley is using the old man. He is using Archie's identity to launder money or hide assets. That is why the accounts are in Archie's name. Archie is a patsy, a straw man, and Caroline is too stupid to see it." He laughed. It was a manic sound. He felt better. He had figured it out. He wasn't the villain here. He was the victim of a complex legal conspiracy. He just needed to find the proof. He would hire his own lawyer. He would sue O'Malley. He would get the money back. Bam! 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 The sound of a heavy fist pounding on the front door echoed through the house like thunder. Brad jumped. He spilled his drink on the rug. "Who the hell is that?" he shouted. He marched to the door. He was ready for a fight. He hoped it was Archie. He wanted to punch the old man in the face. He threw the door open. It wasn't Archie. Standing on the porch was Sheriff Miller. Behind him were 3 deputies, their hands resting on their belts. And parked in the driveway behind Brad's BMW were 2 police cruisers with their lights flashing silently. Sheriff Miller was a mountain of a man with a gray buzz cut and eyes that had seen everything. Brad knew him. He had met him at fundraisers. He had tipped him generously at the Christmas party, hoping to buy some goodwill for the speeding tickets he racked up. Sheriff Brad said, putting on his best charming smile, though it faltered at the edges. "What can I do for you? Is there a problem in the neighborhood?" "There is a problem right here," Mr. Sterling Miller said. His voice was not friendly. It was flat and official. Brad frowned. "Here, I don't understand." Miller pulled a folded document from his breast pocket. He snapped it open. "I am here to serve an order of immediate eviction," Miller said. Brad laughed. It was a reflexive, nervous reaction. "Eviction? Sheriff, come on! You have the wrong house. I have a lease. A 5-year lease. I am barely 2 years in." "The lease has been terminated," Miller said, handing him the paper. Brad snatched it. He scanned the legal jargon. His eyes darted across the page. Failure to pay rent, breach of contract, criminal activity on the premises. "This is garbage," Brad spat. "I pay my rent. Maybe I missed a month or 2, but the management company never complained. Who sent this? Who is the landlord? I want to talk to the owner." "You are holding the owner's declaration," Miller said. "Look at the signature line, Mr. Sterling." Brad looked down. He expected to see the name of the faceless LLC he wrote his checks to, Seaside Properties or Hampton's Holdings. Instead, he saw a name that made his stomach turn over. The Archibald King Trust. Signed Archibald King Trustee. Brad stared at the name. The letters seemed to dance on the page. Archibald King. Archie. "No," he whispered. "No. This is a joke. This is part of the scam." He looked up at the sheriff, his face twisting into a sneer. You are in on it, aren't you? The old man paid you off. Or maybe O'Malley did. This isn't real. Archie King is a broke mailman. He doesn't own this house. I live here. My stuff is here. Mr. King provided the deed, the trust documents, and the lease agreement you signed, Miller said, calm as a stone. It is all legal. You signed a contract with the Archibald King Trust 5 years ago. Did you never ask who Archibald King was? I thought it was just a name, Brad shouted, throwing the paper onto the porch. Like a brand name. Like McDonald's. I didn't think it was him. He lived in a shack in Queens. Why would he live there if he owned this? That is not my concern, Miller said. My concern is enforcing this order. The lease states that upon evidence of assault against the landlord, tenancy is revoked immediately. We have the report from the bank, Mr. Sterling, and the report from the gala. You are out. I am not going anywhere, Brad screamed. He backed into the foyer. This is my home. I have rights. You have to give me 30 days. It is the law. Squatters' rights. Something. Not with this lease, Miller said, stepping across the threshold. He loomed over Brad. And not when you haven't paid the rent. Rent, Brad laughed hysterically. It is $1 a month. $1. It was a formality. I forgot to mail the check. Big deal. I have cash. Here. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled dollar bill. He threw it at the sheriff's chest. There. Rent paid. Now get out of my house. Miller didn't blink. He brushed the dollar bill off his uniform like it was a piece of lint. It is too late for that, son. You have 24 minutes to collect your personal essentials. Everything else stays until the lawyers sort it out. 24 minutes, Brad shrieked. You are crazy. My suits, my watch collection, my art. 23 minutes, Miller said, checking his watch. My deputies will escort you. Brad looked at the deputies. They were big, stone-faced men. They stepped forward. Don't touch me, Brad yelled, backing away. He stumbled over the rug. He looked around the foyer. He looked at the painting Caroline had bought on their honeymoon. He looked at the vase his mother gave him. This is all a lie, he muttered, his eyes wild. Archie is a puppet. He is a front. He doesn't have the brains for this. It is O'Malley. He is stealing the house. He wants it for himself. He ran into the living room. He grabbed a sculpture from the mantel, a heavy bronze horse. You want the house, he screamed. You want the house, Archie. Here, have it. He hurled the sculpture through the big bay window. The glass shattered with a spectacular crash. Shards rained down onto the patio furniture outside. Miller sighed. Add destruction of property to the list, boys. Brad didn't stop. He was in a frenzy now. The walls were closing in on him and he wanted to break them down. He grabbed a lamp and smashed it against the floor. He swept a row of books off the shelf. It is mine, he screamed. It is all mine. I earned it. I suffered for it. I listened to that old man's boring stories for 10 years. I ate his dry turkey at Thanksgiving. I deserve this house. Mr. Sterling, Miller said, his voice hardening. If you break one more thing, I will arrest you right now. Brad spun around. He was breathing hard, sweat dripping down his face. He looked deranged. You can't arrest me, he hissed. I am Brad Sterling. I am on the cover of magazines. Not anymore, Miller said. 20 minutes. Brad looked at the stairs. He ran up them, taking 2 at a time. The deputies followed him, keeping a close distance. He burst into the master bedroom. He grabbed a suitcase from the closet. He didn't pack. He just started throwing things into it. Suits with the hangers still on them. Shoes. Ties. He opened Caroline's jewelry box. It was empty. Archie must have taken it. He screamed again, a sound of pure frustration. He ran to the bathroom. He swept his toiletries into the bag. His expensive creams, his colognes, his razors. He dragged the suitcase out onto the landing. He looked down at the foyer. The sheriff was standing there watching him. "You are making a mistake," Brad yelled down. "You are going to regret this. When I get my lawyers on this, you will be working security at the mall, Miller." Miller just pointed at his watch. 15 minutes. Brad dragged the suitcase down the stairs. It thumped against every step, leaving scratches on the wood. He didn't care. He wanted to leave a scar. He wanted to hurt the house because the house had rejected him. He reached the bottom of the stairs. He looked at the front door. It was wide open. The afternoon sun was streaming in. It looked like freedom, but it felt like exile. He walked out onto the porch. He dragged the suitcase down the steps. He threw it onto the gravel driveway next to his car. He looked back at the house. The deputies were standing in the doorway, blocking the entrance. It was over. The castle had fallen, but he wasn't done. The rage was still boiling inside him, hot and poisonous. He looked at the second-story window. Caroline's painting room. He ran back to the porch. "Mr. Sterling." "That is far enough," Miller warned, stepping forward. "I forgot something." Brad lied, backing away toward the garden path that led around the side of the house. "My medication. It is in the kitchen." Miller gestured to a deputy. "Go with him." Brad ran around the side of the house. He wasn't going to the kitchen. He saw the patio furniture. He saw the expensive teak chairs Caroline loved. He grabbed one. He threw it into the pool. The splash was satisfying. He grabbed another one. "Stop that!" the deputy shouted, running toward him. Brad laughed. He grabbed a planter, a heavy ceramic pot filled with hydrangeas. He lifted it over his head. "Happy birthday to me!" he screamed and threw it through the French doors of the dining room. Glass exploded inward. The deputy tackled him. Brad hit the grass hard. The wind was knocked out of him. "That is it," Miller said, walking around the corner. "Cuff him." "No," Brad wheezed, struggling against the deputy's weight. "No, wait. I am leaving. I am leaving. Get him off the property," Miller said. "If he comes back within 500 feet, arrest him for trespassing." The deputy hauled Brad to his feet. He shoved him toward his car. Brad stumbled. He looked like a madman. His clothes were stained with grass and sweat. His hair was wild. He reached his car. He fumbled with his keys. He dropped them in the gravel. He had to get down on his knees to find them. It was the ultimate humiliation. He found the keys. He stood up. He looked at Miller. "Tell Archie something for me," Brad said, his voice trembling with hate. "Tell him he didn't win. He thinks he is smart. He thinks he is a king. He is nothing. And I am going to prove it. I am going to find out where he stole that money from, and I am going to send him to prison." "Goodbye, Mr. Sterling," Miller said. Brad got into his car. He slammed the door. He revved the engine. He peeled out of the driveway, spraying gravel everywhere. He almost hit one of the police cruisers on his way out. He drove down the street, his heart pounding, his vision blurred with tears of rage. He had nowhere to go. His credit cards were dead. His office was a crime scene. His wife was gone. But as he drove, a new thought formed in his mind. A thought that was twisted and desperate and perfect. The gala. The State Entrepreneur Gala was tonight. Everyone would be there. The press, the investors, the power players. Archie had humiliated him in private. Archie had humiliated him at the bank. Brad wiped his eyes. He smiled, a rictus of pure malice. He was going to go to the gala. He was going to get on that stage. And he was going to tell the world that Archibald King was a fraud, a thief, and a senile old man who was abusing his family. He would play the victim. He would cry. He would beg for help. And they would believe him. Because he was Brad Sterling. And he could sell anything. Even a lie. I sat in the back of the phantom black Bentley Flying Spur, the tinted windows rolling up the world like a dark curtain. For years, this car had sat in a climate-controlled garage in Manhattan, started once a week by a mechanic to keep the engine purring. I hadn't ridden in it since the day I walked away from the boardroom. Driving the Ford truck had been part of my penance, part of my disguise. But today, the disguise was burning. I had sent Caroline ahead in a town car I hired. She insisted she needed to face him one last time. She wanted closure. She wanted to look him in the eye without me standing there as a shield and ask him why. I didn't like it. My instinct was to lock her away in a tower until Brad was rotting in a cell. But O'Malley advised against it. "Let her see him," Mr. King O'Malley had said. "Let her see him when he has nothing left to hide behind." That is how she breaks the spell. So I followed a block behind, watching the GPS tracker on the town car. We were parked just down the road from the estate gates. Through the windshield, I saw the scene unfolding on the sidewalk. It was pathetic. It was tragic. And it was necessary. The sheriff's deputies had dumped Brad's hastily packed suitcases on the curb, outside the wrought iron gates. They were piled haphazardly expensive leather bags, sitting in the dirt, next to a fire hydrant. Brad was standing there pacing, like a caged tiger. He had taken off his jacket. His shirt was soaked with sweat. He was kicking at his own luggage, screaming into his phone, probably leaving voicemails for lawyers who wouldn't call him back. Caroline got out of the town car. She walked toward him slowly. She looked fragile in the afternoon light, her arms wrapped around herself as if she were cold. I tapped the partition. "Pull up closer, Henry, but keep the windows up." The Bentley glided forward, silent as a shark. We stopped 50 feet away. I could see them perfectly. I rolled the window down just an inch to hear. Brad saw her. He stopped pacing. For a second, I saw relief wash over his face. He thought she was there to save him. He thought she had brought the checkbook, the apology, the way back in. "Caroline, baby," he shouted, spreading his arms. "Thank God. You came back. I knew you would come back. Look at this. Look at what your father did to me. He humiliated me. He threw me out like trash." He tried to hug her. Caroline took a step back. She held up a hand. "Don't touch me, Brad," she said. Her voice was shaking, but it was audible. Brad stopped. His face hardened. "What is this? Are you still mad about the bank?" "That was a misunderstanding, Caroline. I was trying to protect the assets." "You stole from him," Caroline said. "You stole $50,000. "It was a loan," Brad snapped, waving his hand dismissively. "I told you. It doesn't matter. It is peanuts. When I get the lawsuit settlement, I will pay him back double. But right now we need to focus on us. We need to get a hotel. We need to strategize. Get your bags. Let's go." He reached for her arm again, assuming she would obey, assuming the old programming would kick in. "Where did it go, Brad?" Caroline asked. She didn't move. Brad froze. "What?" "The $50,000. Where did it go?" "You said you spent it on the business. But O'Malley showed me the records. The business accounts are empty. You haven't paid vendors in months. So where is my father's money?" Brad looked away. He ran a hand through his messy hair. It went to overhead. "Operating costs." "You don't understand business, Caroline. It is complicated." "I saw the gambling receipts," Caroline said. Her voice broke. "O'Malley gave me the file in the car. Atlantic City. Online sports books. You lost it all, didn't you?" Brad's face turned a mottled red. He looked around to see if anyone was watching. He didn't notice the black car idling in the shadows. "Shut up," he hissed. "Keep your voice down." "You gambled away his retirement," Caroline yelled, tears finally spilling over. "You gambled away our future. And when you ran out of money, you tried to have him committed. You were going to lock him up so you could steal the house and gamble that away too." Brad snapped. The facade of the charming businessman, the loving husband, the victim, It all shattered. The monster underneath clawed its way out. He stepped forward and grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her violently. "You stupid woman!" he screamed, spitting in her face. "You think you are so smart. You are nothing without me. You are a boring, mousy little painter with no talent. I gave you a life. I gave you status. You gave me lies," Caroline cried, struggling to get free. "Let me go." "I did what I had to do," Brad roared. "Yes, I spent the money. I deserved that money. I had to put up with you and your embarrassing father for 10 years. I earned every penny. And you know what? I would do it again." Caroline managed to shove him away. She stumbled back, gasping. "I want a divorce," she said. The air seemed to leave the street. The birds stopped singing. Brad stood there, panting, his chest heaving. He looked at her as if she had spoken a foreign language. "A divorce," he repeated quietly. "Yes," Caroline said, straightening her spine. "I am done." Brad laughed. It was a dry, soulless sound. "You can't divorce me. You don't have the guts. Who is going to take care of you?" "Your daddy. He is going to be dead in 5 years. And then what? You will be alone. You will be a middle-aged divorcee with nothing. I would rather be alone than with a thief," Caroline said. That was the trigger. The word thief. It pierced his ego like a needle. Brad's hand lashed out before I could even blink. The sound of the slap was sickening. It was a meaty, wet crack that echoed off the pavement. Caroline cried out and fell to the ground, clutching her cheek. She looked up at him in shock. He had never hit her before. He had emotionally battered her for a decade, but he had never crossed the physical line. Until now. Brad stood over her, his hand raised for a second blow. His eyes were wide and crazy. "You watch your mouth," he screamed. "You watch how you speak to me. I am the victim here." I didn't wait for the driver. I opened the door of the Bentley. I didn't run. Kings don't run. I stepped out onto the asphalt, my leather shoes making a solid, definitive sound. I buttoned my jacket. I adjusted my cuffs. I walked toward them. Brad heard the car door close. He spun around. He saw the massive black car gleaming in the sun. He saw me. But he didn't see Archie the postman. He saw Archibald King. I was wearing a charcoal gray 3-piece suit that cost $5,000. My tie was silk. My posture was straight. I radiated a cold, terrifying calm. Brad lowered his hand. He stepped back from Caroline. He looked at the car, then at me. Confusion warred with fear in his eyes. "Archie," he stammered. Whose car is that?" I didn't answer. I didn't look at him. I looked only at my daughter lying on the sidewalk, holding her face. I walked past Brad, as if he were a fire hydrant. I knelt down beside Caroline. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" I asked softly. She nodded, sobbing into her hands. "Daddy, he hit me." "I know," I said. I helped her stand up. I brushed the dirt from her coat. I checked her cheek. It was already turning red. I turned to face Brad. He was backing away, holding his hands up. "Now, Archie, listen," he babbled, sweat pouring down his face. "She was hysterical. I didn't mean to. It was a reflex. We are both under a lot of stress." I looked at him. I looked at the man I had tried to help, the man I had welcomed into my family. I felt a cold detachment. He wasn't a person anymore. He was a problem, and I was the solution. I reached into my inside pocket. Brad flinched, thinking I was reaching for a weapon. In a way, I was. I pulled out a silk handkerchief. I handed it to Caroline. Then I looked at Brad. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I spoke with the quiet authority of a man who could buy and sell Brad's entire existence before lunch. "You touched her," I said. Brad swallowed hard. "Archie, please. Let's talk about this." "I can explain." There is nothing to explain, I said. I turned back to the Bentley. Henry the driver was standing by the open rear door waiting. I gestured to the car. Caroline, I said. She looked at the car. She looked at the luxurious leather interior, the polished wood, the safety it promised. Then she looked at Brad standing amidst his pile of garbage on the street. She looked at the man who had promised to love and cherish her. She saw him for what he was, a small, violent man with nothing left to offer but pain. Get in the car, I said to her, or stay here on the sidewalk with him. It is your choice. Caroline didn't hesitate. She didn't look back at Brad. She walked to the car and slid into the back seat. Henry closed the door with a solid, reassuring thud. I walked to the other side of the car. I paused with my hand on the handle. Brad was trembling. He looked at the Bentley. He looked at me. The realization was dawning on him. The suits, the lawyer, the car. Who are you? He whispered. Who are you really? I looked him up and down. I am the man who just canceled your existence, Brad. I got in the car. Drive Henry, I said. As we pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Brad was standing alone on the curb, surrounded by his suitcases. He looked small. He looked insignificant. He was screaming something at the retreating car, flailing his arms, but I couldn't hear him through the soundproof glass. I pressed a button on the armrest, and the privacy divider slid up, blocking him from view entirely. I turned to Caroline. She was pressing the cold silk handkerchief to her cheek. She was crying, but her eyes were dry. Did you see his face? She asked quietly. I did, I said. He looked scared, she said. He should be, I replied. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the Bentley gliding over the road like a hovercraft. Caroline ran her hand over the soft leather of the seat. She looked at the minibar, the screens, the controls. Dad, she said, this car. It is a Bentley. It is, I said. You own this. I do. She looked at me. Why the truck? Why the flannel shirts? Why the old apartment? I poured 2 glasses of sparkling water from the chilled decanter. I handed one to her. Because Caroline, I said, taking a sip. When your mother died, I realized something. We had money. We had so much money. But we had attracted people who only loved the money. Your uncle. Your cousins. They all turned into vultures. I didn't want that for you. I wanted you to find a man who loved Caroline, not the heiress to the king fortune. I failed you, she whispered. I picked the worst one. You didn't fail, I said. He fooled us both. He is a con artist, Caroline. He mirrors what you want to see. But mirrors shatter. She took a sip of the water. Her hand was steadying. What happens now? She asked. Now, I said, checking my watch. Now we go to the city. I have a suite at the Pierre. You are going to take a hot bath. You are going to order room service. And you are going to sleep in a bed that doesn't belong to him. And Brad? She asked. I looked out the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the highway. Brad has an appointment, I said. An appointment. With reality, I said. And reality is a very harsh mistress. I picked up the secure phone in the armrest. I dialed O'Malley. He is on the street, I said. Good, O'Malley replied. Phase 3 is ready. The gala starts in 2 hours. He will be there, I said. He is desperate. He thinks he can spin this. He thinks he can find a new mark. We are ready for him, O'Malley said. The police are briefed. The forensic accountants have finished the report. The stage is set. Excellent, I said. I will see you there. I hung up. Caroline looked at me. You are going to the gala, she asked. We are going to the gala, I corrected. But I look like a mess, she said, touching her bruised cheek. I can't go there. Everyone will see. That is the point, I said, turning to her. Let them see. Let them see what he did. Let them see the bruise. It is your badge of honor, Caroline. It proves you survived him. And tonight you are going to watch him fall. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. A fire lit up in her eyes, a fire I hadn't seen since she was a teenager. Okay, she said. Let's watch him fall. The Bentley sped up, rushing toward the city lights, toward the final act of the tragedy of Brad Sterling. He thought he had hit rock bottom on that sidewalk. He had no idea that the floor was about to drop out from under him completely. The silence inside the cabin of the Bentley Flying Spur was absolute. It was a hermetically sealed chamber of leather and polished walnut, separate from the world outside. The screaming match on the sidewalk, the humiliation of the eviction, the violent crack of Brad's hand against my daughter's face, all of it felt a million miles away, behind the double-paned acoustic glass. The only sound was the soft hum of the tires on the asphalt and the clinking of ice in Caroline's glass as her hand trembled. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She was staring at the small fold-down table in front of her, where the crystal decanter sat. She looked shell-shocked. The red mark on her cheek was darkening, turning into a bruise that would last for days. It was a physical receipt of the transaction she had just closed with her husband. She took a sip of water and finally looked at me. Her eyes were wide, searching my face as if she was seeing a stranger. In a way, she was. She was looking for the father who clipped coupons and complained about the price of passage, not the man wearing a $5,000 suit in the back of a $250,000 car. Dad, she whispered, her voice cracking. Please, you have to tell me. Is this real? Are you? I reached into the leather pocket stitched into the back of the driver's seat. I pulled out a heavy navy blue portfolio embossed with a gold lion. It was the annual report for King Logistics. I placed it on the table between us. Open it, I said gently. Caroline opened the cover with shaking fingers. She stared at the first page. It was a letter to shareholders. At the bottom was a signature she had seen on birthday cards and report cards her entire life. Archibald King, founder and chairman. She turned the page. She saw the photographs of the container ships, massive steel beasts crossing the Pacific that carrying the King logo. She saw the photos of the distribution centers in Hamburg, Singapore, and Los Angeles. She saw the financials. The numbers were in the billions. She gasped, a sound that sucked the air out of the car. She looked up at me, tears spilling over her lashes. You built this, she asked. You did all of this. I started with one tugboat in 1975, I said, looking out the window at the passing trees. I worked 18 hours a day. Your mother did the books at the kitchen table. We built it brick by brick, container by container. But why, she asked? Why the secrets? Why did you let everyone think you were nobody? I turned to her. I took her hand. Her skin was cold. Because of what happened after the IPO, I said. When we took the company public 20 years ago, suddenly everyone knew who we were. And suddenly we had family we had never met. Cousins who needed loans. Friends who had investment ideas. People looked at me and they didn't see Archie anymore. They saw a walking ATM. It broke your mother's heart, Caroline. She lost her best friend because of a loan we refused to give. I squeezed her hand. When she passed away, I made a choice, I continued. I wanted you to have a normal life. I didn't want you to be the heiress. I didn't want men lining up to date your bank account. I wanted someone to fall in love with Caroline. Just Caroline. The girl who likes to paint and laughs too loud at bad movies. Caroline looked down at the portfolio. A tear splashed onto the glossy paper. So you hid it, she said. I stepped back, I said. I sold the big house. I moved to the apartment in Queens. I drove the truck. I wanted to filter out the gold diggers. I wanted to see who would stick around when there was nothing to gain. And then I met Brad, she whispered. I nodded. I saw him coming a mile away, Caroline. He was charming. He was ambitious. But he had dead eyes. He looked at you like you were an accessory. But you were so happy. You were glowing. I thought maybe I was wrong. I thought maybe he just needed a chance. So I played the part of the retired postman. I wanted to see how he treated me when he thought I had no power. Carolyn closed the portfolio. She covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. He treated you like garbage, she choked out. He made you sit in the corner. He made fun of your clothes. He threw your food on the floor, Dad. He threw it on the floor and told you to lick it up. It didn't matter to me, I said, softy. His opinion means nothing. It matters to me, she cried, looking up. Her face was twisted with anguish. I let him do it. I sat there, and I let him humiliate you. For years, I told you to dress better. I told you not to tell your stories because they bored him. I was ashamed of you, Dad. I was ashamed of the man who built an empire because a con artist told me you weren't good enough. That was the reaction I had been fearing. Not anger at the deception, but the crushing weight of guilt. I moved across the seat and wrapped my arms around her. She buried her face in my shoulder, weeping uncontrollably. Shh, I smoothed her hair. It is okay. It is not okay, she sobbed. I bought you that suit at Sears. I bought it with a coupon because Brad said we couldn't afford to waste money on you. And you wore it. You wore it to that dinner, and he ruined it. I wore it with pride, I said, because you bought it for me. She pulled back, wiping her eyes with the silk handkerchief I had given her. She looked at the report again. Then she looked at a specific page, the summary of the stolen funds O'Malley had compiled. $50,000, she said, reading the line item. The date. That was 2 years ago. I nodded. That was our anniversary, she whispered. He bought me diamond earrings. He told me he closed a big deal. He threw a party on a boat. She looked at me with horror. He paid for my anniversary gift with your retirement money. He stole from you to buy me jewelry to show off to his friends. He stole from both of us, I said. He stole my money, and he stole your trust. I feel so stupid, she said. I believed everything. I believed he was a genius. I believed I was lucky he chose me. He made me feel small, Dad. He made me feel like I couldn't survive without him. And all the while he was a parasite feeding off you. He is a master manipulator, I said. He isolated you. He made you doubt your own memory. That is what predators do. But you broke free today. You stood up to him. I only stood up because you were there, she said. Because O'Malley was there. If I had been alone, if you had been alone, you would have figured it out. Eventually, I said firmly, you are my daughter. You have king blood. It takes a while to boil, but when it does, it burns everything down. She looked out the window. We were crossing the bridge into Manhattan now. The city skyline was glittering in the twilight, a landscape of steel and glass that I had helped shape. I don't care about the money, she said quietly. I really don't. I would be happy living in your apartment in Queens. I hate that he made you suffer. I hate that he made me complicit in your suffering. I didn't suffer, Caroline, I said, taking her chin and making her look at me. I was watching. I was waiting. And I was preparing for today. Every insult he threw at me was just another line in his indictment. Every dollar he stole was another nail in his coffin. I wasn't a victim. I was a hunter waiting for the trap to snap shut. She managed a weak smile. You really are terrifying, aren't you? Only to the bad guys, I said. The car slowed down, turning onto Fifth Avenue. The Pierre Hotel loomed ahead, its awning bathed in golden light. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we get ready," I said. "Brad is going to the gala tonight. He thinks he can spin this. He thinks he can find a new victim. He is going to get on that stage and lie to the entire city. And we are going to stop him," she asked. "No," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "We are not going to stop him. We are going to let him speak. We are going to let him dig his hole so deep he will never climb out. And then we are going to turn on the lights." Carolyn looked at her reflection in the darkened glass. She touched the bruise on her cheek again. Then she lowered her hand. She sat up straighter. She smoothed her skirt. "I want to be there," she said. "I want to see his face when he realizes who he really messed with. You will be right next to me," I promised. The car stopped. The doorman opened the door. I stepped out into the cool evening air and offered my hand to my daughter. She took it. She wasn't the scared girl on the sidewalk anymore. She was the heiress to the King Empire, and she was ready for war. The grand ballroom was a shark tank filled with the smell of expensive perfume and predatory ambition. 500 of the state's most influential business leaders were gathered under the massive chandeliers, holding crystal flutes of champagne and looking for the next big thing. I stood on the VIP balcony in the shadows, looking down at the floor. Caroline stood beside me. She had changed into a midnight blue gown that I had sent up to the suite. She looked like royalty, but her eyes were fixed on the entrance downstairs. She was waiting for the rat to enter the maze. He didn't disappoint. Brad Sterling arrived 20 minutes late. He walked through the main doors with the frantic energy of a man who had just sprinted from a burning building. He was wearing a fresh tuxedo, but it didn't fit him right. It was likely bought off the rack an hour ago to replace the one he was wearing when the sheriff dragged him through the gravel. His hair was slicked back too hard, and his skin had the gray pallor of someone who had just posted bail. I checked my phone. O'Malley had sent a text. "Subject is on site. Bail posted at 6 p.m. He is desperate." I watched Brad approach the check-in desk. I could see him arguing with the young woman with the clipboard. He was gesturing wildly, pointing at his chest. I knew exactly what he was saying. "Do you know who I am? I am the keynote speaker. I am Brad Sterling." The girl looked uncomfortable. She scanned her list. His name wasn't there anymore. I had made sure of that. But I had also given specific instructions to the head of security. Let him in. I didn't want him stopped at the door. I wanted him inside. I wanted him on the stage. The security guard stepped in, whispered something to the girl, and she reluctantly handed Brad a generic guest badge. Brad snatched it without a thank you. He pinned it to his lapel aggressively and stormed into the room. He immediately headed for the bar. He ordered a double whiskey. He downed it in one swallow and turned to survey the room. He was scanning the crowd for targets. He needed a lifeline. He needed someone rich enough and naive enough to believe his story before the truth hit the morning papers. He spotted a group of investors near the ice sculpture. I recognized them. They were old money real estate tycoons, the kind of men Brad had spent his entire career trying to emulate. He straightened his jacket, put on his 1,000-watt smile, and approached them. From the balcony, I could see the performance begin. Brad clapped one of the men on the shoulder. He laughed too loudly. He leaned in close, whispering conspiratorially. I tapped the earpiece I was wearing. O'Malley had planted a listening device near the main gathering points. The audio feed crackled to life. "Terrible misunderstanding," Brad was saying. His voice smooth but rapid. "I was the victim of a hostile takeover. Can you believe it? My own father-in-law. It turns out he has been running a Ponzi scheme for decades." I looked at Carolyn. She heard it too. She gripped the railing, her knuckles white. "He is lying," she whispered. "He is telling them you are a criminal." "Let him talk," I said. The investors looked skeptical. One of them, an older man named Mr. Roth, raised an eyebrow. A Ponzi scheme, Roth asked. But isn't your father-in-law a mail carrier? That was the cover, Brad insisted, his eyes wide and manic. That is how he hid the money. He has millions stashed away. Illegal money. He used it to buy off the police. He planted evidence against me. He kicked me out of my own house today because I found out the truth. I am a whistleblower, gentlemen, and I need resources to fight this corruption. He was good. I had to give him that. He took the reality of my wealth, which he couldn't explain, and twisted it into a narrative that made him the hero. He was banking on their paranoia. He was banking on the idea that nobody gets rich quietly unless they are dirty. I need a bridge loan, Brad pressed. Just $500,000 to cover legal fees and secure the assets. Once I expose him, I will control the estate. I will give you a 20% return in a month. Mr. Roth took a step back. He swirled his drink. Brad, you smell like a jail cell, he said bluntly. And word on the street is your checks are bouncing all over town. I think we will pass. The group turned their backs on him. It was the ultimate social death sentence. Brad stood there alone in the middle of the crowd. His smile faltered. He looked around wildly. He tried another group. They ignored him. He tried to grab the arm of a tech CEO who pulled away with a look of disgust. The walls were closing in. He realized that the whispers had started. People were looking at him, but not with admiration. They were looking at him like he was a contagion. He retreated to the bar. He ordered another drink. His hands were shaking so badly, he spilled some on his shirt. He looked at the stage at the front of the room. The podium was empty, waiting for the opening remarks. A microphone stood there, gleaming in the spotlight. I saw the idea form in his mind. It was the same look he had when he decided to rob my retirement account. It was the look of a man who thinks he can talk his way out of gravity. He slammed his glass down. He adjusted his tie. He wasn't going to beg anymore. He was going to demand. He was going to hijack the event. He believed that if he could just get on that stage, if he could just harness the power of the microphone, he could sway the room. He could turn the mob against me. He started walking toward the stage. He moved with a manic determination, shoving past waiters and guests. "He is going for the mic," Caroline said, her breath hitching. "I know," I said. "Should we stop him?" "No," I said, signaling to the technician in the booth behind us. "Cut the house music. Give him the floor." The soft jazz music died away. The room fell silent. The guests turned toward the front, confused. Brad climbed the stairs to the stage. He tripped on the last step but caught himself. He rushed to the podium. He grabbed the microphone with both hands like it was a life preserver in a storm. Feedback squealed through the speakers. The crowd winced. "Excuse me," Brad shouted, his voice booming and distorted. "Excuse me, everyone. I need your attention." He looked out at the sea of faces. He was sweating profusely under the stage lights. He looked deranged, but he also looked dangerous. "You all know me," he yelled. "I am Brad Sterling. I was supposed to be your keynote speaker tonight. I was supposed to be on the cover of the magazine." But I was silenced. I was removed. Because I know the truth. The crowd murmured. Security guards started to move toward the stage, but I held up a hand from the balcony, stopping them. "I am a victim," Brad screamed, pointing a finger at the camera crew that was live streaming the event to the entire state. "I am the victim of a massive fraud orchestrated by a man you all think is a nobody. My father-in-law, Archibald King. He is a predator. He is a criminal. He destroyed my business. He stole my home. He turned my wife against me." Caroline flinched as he said her name. I put a hand on her back. "He thinks he can buy you all," Brad continued, his voice rising to a fever pitch. "He thinks he can buy justice. But I am still standing. I am here to ask for your help. I am asking for a partner who believes in truth, who believes in fighting the corrupt elites. He was panting now, his eyes wild. "Invest in me," he pleaded, changing his tone to a desperate beg. "Invest in justice. Help me take him down and we will all be rich. I promise you. I am the future of this industry." He stopped, waiting for applause, waiting for someone to stand up and shout their support. Instead, the lights in the ballroom suddenly went black. Brad gasped. The room plunged into darkness. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Then a single spotlight snapped on. It didn't hit Brad, it hit the massive screen behind him. The screen flickered to life. The logo Brad had projected there earlier, the Sterling Development logo, dissolved into static. In its place, a new image appeared. It was high definition, crisp and gold. It was a lion roaring inside a shield. Below it were the words that ran the global supply chain. King Logistics. A deep voice boomed over the PA system, silencing the room instantly. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host for the evening, the diamond sponsor, and the founder of King Logistics." The spotlight swung up to the balcony. It blinded me for a second. I stepped forward into the light. I felt Caroline step up beside me. I looked down at the stage. Brad was shielding his eyes, looking up into the glare. He looked like a bug under a magnifying glass. "Mr. Archibald King." The room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar of shock and recognition. Every person in that room knew the name King Logistics. They just didn't know the face. Until now. I started to walk toward the stairs that led down to the main floor. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. I walked with the weight of 40 years of empire building behind me. Brad stood frozen on the stage. He watched me come. He saw the suit. He saw the way the billionaires in the room nodded at me with respect. The reality of his situation crashed down on him with the force of a tidal wave. He hadn't been fighting a criminal. He had been fighting a titan. And he had just poked the titan in the eye. The feedback screech from the microphone sliced through the ballroom like a knife, causing 500 wealthy guests to cover their ears. Brad did not flinch. He gripped the podium with both hands, his knuckles white, his face slick with a sheen of oily sweat. He looked out at the sea of tuxedos and evening gowns, his eyes darting frantically from face to face. He was searching for a lifeline, but all he found was confused silence. I stood on the balcony watching him. Caroline was beside me, trembling, not with fear, but with a simmering rage. She wanted to run down there and pull him off the stage, but I held up a hand. "Not yet. Let him speak. Let him hang himself with his own words." "Excuse me," Brad shouted, his voice booming through the speakers, distorted and loud. "I know I was removed from the program. I know they tried to silence me, but the truth cannot be silenced." He pointed a shaking finger toward the back of the room where the gala organizers were frantically whispering into their headsets, trying to cut the audio feed. "They don't want you to hear this," Brad yelled. "The elites, the gatekeepers, they are afraid of what I represent. I am a self-made man. I built my company from nothing, and today I was destroyed, systematically dismantled by a force you cannot see." A murmur went through the crowd. People were looking at each other, wondering if this was part of the show or a mental breakdown. "I am the victim of a conspiracy," Brad continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that echoed weirdly in the large hall. "A conspiracy led by a man who has fooled you all. A man who pretends to be a simple civil servant. A man who delivers your mail and smiles at your children while he runs a criminal empire from the shadows." He was talking about me. He was weaving a narrative so insane that he actually believed it. In Brad's mind, there was no way a postman could be a billionaire legally. Therefore, I had to be a criminal. And if I was a criminal, he was the hero exposing me. My father-in-law, Archibald King Brad, spat the name like it was poison. He lives in a tenement in Queens. He drives a truck that belongs in a junkyard. Yet somehow he has lawyers who cost $1,000 an hour. Somehow, he has the power to freeze bank accounts and cancel multi-million-dollar contracts. Ask yourselves how. How does a postman possess the power of a god? He paused for effect, breathing heavily into the microphone. Money laundering. Brad declared, answering his own question. He is a front, a straw man for foreign interests. And because I found out, because I got too close to the truth, he came for me. He evicted me from my home today. He turned my wife against me. He tried to ruin my reputation, to discredit me before I could take the stage. He turned toward the camera crew that was broadcasting the event live to the business channel and streaming platforms. He looked directly into the lens, his eyes wide and manic. "Are you watching, Archie?" he screamed at the camera. "I know you are watching. You think you have won. You think because you took my house and my money that I will crawl away. But I am Brad Sterling. I am a fighter." He turned back to the audience, spreading his arms wide. "I am here to offer you an opportunity, gentlemen. I am offering you a chance to stand on the right side of history. My assets are temporarily frozen by corrupt legal maneuvers. My project Sterling Heights is ready to break ground. It is a gold mine. I need a partner. I need a war chest to fight this corruption." He started pointing at specific people in the front row. Men he knew, men he had pestered for loans before. "Mr. Roth, invest in me. Help me sue him, and I will give you 30% of the recovery. Mr. Jacobs, put up the capital for the legal defense and you will own half the company. We can take him down. We can seize his illegal assets. We can be heroes." The crowd began to pull back. It was a physical reaction, like a tide retreating from a polluted shore. They saw the madness in his eyes. They saw the desperate sweat staining his collar. They didn't see a hero. They saw a liability. Brad saw them pulling away. Panic flared in his chest. "Don't turn away from me," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "Don't you see? If he can do this to me, he can do it to you. He is a predator hiding in plain sight. I am the only thing standing between you and him. I need 500,000. Just a bridge loan. Cash. Tonight." He was begging now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the naked terror of a man who knows the clock has run out. "Someone help me," he whispered into the mic. "Please. I am good for it. I swear." The room was silent. A waiter dropped a spoon, and the sound rang out like a bell. Brad stood there alone on the stage, a small man under a big spotlight, stripped of his dignity, stripped of his lies, waiting for a salvation that was never coming. I looked at Caroline. She was crying silent tears, not for him, but for the time she had wasted believing in him. "Is it time?" she asked softly. I nodded, adjusting my cufflinks. "It is time," I said. I signaled the technician in the booth. "Kill the lights." The room plunged into darkness the moment I gave the signal. Brad stopped mid-scream, his mouth hanging open like a fish gasping for air. The sudden absence of light was a physical shock, silencing the murmurs of the confused crowd. For 5 seconds, there was nothing but the hum of the ventilation system and the frantic breathing of a man who knew he was losing control. Then the bass rumble began. It started low, a vibration you felt in your chest rather than heard. It grew louder, filling the cavernous ballroom. The massive LED screen behind the stage, which had been dark, suddenly exploded with light. The Sterling Development logo that cheap graphic Brad had designed himself was gone. In its place was a symbol that commanded respect in every port and boardroom across the globe. A golden lion rampant set against a deep navy shield. The image was 50 feet high, crisp and intimidating. Below it, in elegant serif letters, the name appeared. King Logistics. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Every person there knew that logo. It was on the side of every third truck on the highway. It was on the shipping containers stacked in the harbor. It was the symbol of old, impenetrable wealth, The announcer's voice, smooth and pre-recorded, boomed through the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the stage. It is our distinct honor to welcome the host of this evening's gala, the Diamond sponsor, and the founder and honorary chairman of King Logistics, Mr. Archibald King. A single spotlight cut through the dark. It didn't hit the stage. It hit the top of the stairs where I was standing. I stepped into the light. I straightened my cuffs. I looked at Caroline. She nodded, a fierce pride burning in her eyes. She squeezed my hand once, then let go. This was my walk. I began to descend. I didn't rush. I walked with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who owns the building, the land, and the time itself. I could feel 500 pairs of eyes locked on me. I saw Mr. Roth in the front row drop his glass. It shattered on the floor, but he didn't even look down. He was staring at me. He was staring at the postman he had ignored for years, realizing he was looking at a titan. Brad stood frozen on the stage. He was blinking rapidly, trying to process what was happening. He looked at the screen. He looked at me. He looked at the screen again. The cognitive dissonance was breaking him. His brain couldn't reconcile the old man in the flannel shirt with the billionaire walking down the stairs. Archie, he whispered. The microphone caught it, amplifying his confusion to the entire room. I walked up the stairs to the stage. My footsteps were heavy and rhythmic on the wood. I stopped 3 feet away from him. I could smell his fear. It smelled like sour sweat and cheap whiskey. I reached out my hand. I didn't say a word. I just waited. Brad looked at the microphone in his hand. He looked at me. He looked like a child caught holding a stolen toy. His hand shook violently as he handed it to me. I took it. I adjusted the stand. I looked out at the audience. The silence was absolute. Good evening, everyone, I said. My voice was calm, level. I apologize for the theatrical interruption, and I apologize for the entertainment you have just endured. It seems there was a clerical error with the guest list. I turned to Brad. He was backing away slowly, his eyes wide and terrified. You were telling these good people about a conspiracy, Brad, I said. You were telling them about a criminal empire, about hidden assets, about a postman who runs the world. Brad swallowed hard. Archie, I didn't mean... You were right, I said, cutting him off. About one thing. I do have hidden assets. Assets you know very little about. I reached into my tuxedo pocket and pulled out a folded document. I snapped it open. You are looking for investors, Brad. You are looking for partners. You told this room you are a self-made man, a consultant for 3 major supply chain firms, Atlantic Freight, North Star Shipping, and Harbor Point Logistics. Brad nodded frantically, grasping at the straw. Yes. Yes. I consult for them. They are my clients. They trust me. Ask them. I don't need to ask them, I said, because I own them. Brad stopped breathing. I bought Atlantic Freight in 1990. I acquired North Star in 2005, and Harbor Point has been a subsidiary of King Logistics since before you were born. I took a step closer to him. You have been working for me for 5 years, Brad. Every consulting check you cashed came from my accounts. Every deal you thought you closed was approved by my board. I kept you employed because I wanted to see if you could become a man worthy of my daughter. I dropped the document on the podium. You failed. As of this morning, you are fired. From all 3 companies. Your contracts are void. Your non-competes are enforced. You are unemployed, Brad, and you are unemployable. The crowd erupted into whispers. Brad looked like he was going to vomit. He looked at the audience, pleading with his eyes, but he found no sympathy. He had insulted them, he had begged them, and now they knew he was a fraud living on his father-in-law's charity. But that is not why I am here, I continued, my voice hardening. I am not here to discuss HR matters. I am here to address the accusations of crime. I pointed to the side of the stage. You called me a criminal, Brad. You accused me of money laundering. That is a serious charge. But projection is a funny thing. Usually the man screaming about thieves is the one with his hand in the jar. Two men in dark suits stepped out from the wings. They weren't security guards. They wore badges on their belts and windbreakers that said, Economic Crimes Unit. Brad saw them. He let out a strangled noise, a whimper of pure terror. What? What is this? He stammered, backing up until he hit the screen behind him. While you were giving your speech, Brad, I said the forensic accountants at King Logistics finished their audit of the project funds. The $2 million seed money you managed for the subsidiaries. Brad shook his head. No. No. That is business. That is overhead. It is embezzlement, I said. $200,000 transferred to offshore gambling sites. $50,000 stolen from a retirement account. And credit card fraud totaling another $40,000. The officers walked onto the stage. They moved efficiently, professionally. They flanked Brad. Brad Sterling, one of the officers, said, his voice projecting without a mic. You are under arrest for grand larceny, wire fraud, and elder abuse. Put your hands behind your back. Brad looked at the officer, then at me. His face crumpled. The arrogance, the bravado, the rage, it all dissolved, leaving a small, frightened boy. Archie, please, he sobbed, falling to his knees. Don't let them take me. I am family. I am your son-in-law. I looked down at him. I looked at the man who had mocked my clothes, who had isolated my daughter, who had tried to lock me away in a home so he could steal the last dime I had. You are not family, I said, my voice cold as ice. You are a bad investment, and I am liquidating my position. The officers hauled him up. They snapped the handcuffs on his wrists. The sound was a metallic click that echoed through the silent ballroom. Wait! Brad screamed as they started to drag him away. Wait. Caroline. Caroline, help me. Tell them. I looked up at the balcony. Caroline was standing there, gripping the railing. She looked down at her husband. She saw him for what he was. A thief. A liar. A coward. She didn't say a word. She just turned her back and walked away. Brad screamed. It was a raw, ugly sound. He kicked and struggled, but the officers held him tight. They dragged him across the stage, past the podium, past me. As they passed, I leaned in close. You wanted the spotlight, Brad, I whispered. You got it. Smile for the cameras. They took him down the stairs and marched him through the center aisle of the ballroom. The guests parted, forming a gauntlet of shame. Cameras flashed. Phones recorded every second of his downfall. He was live-streaming his own destruction, just as he had planned, only the ending was different. I stood alone on the stage under the golden lion. I adjusted my tie. I picked up the microphone one last time. Thank you for your patience, I said to the stunned room. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. The bar is open, and it is on the house. I dropped the microphone. I walked off the stage into the shadows, leaving the applause behind me. It was over. The king had returned, and the pretender was in chains. The county jail was a stark contrast to the velvet ropes and champagne of the gala. It smelled of bleach and despair. Brad sat in the holding cell wearing an orange jumpsuit that was 3 sizes too big. His tuxedo had been bagged and tagged, evidence of a life he no longer owned. He looked small. He looked broken. But even in the cage, the arrogance hadn't completely died. It was just hiding behind the panic. He was allowed one phone call. He didn't call a lawyer. He knew he couldn't afford one anymore. He didn't call his parents. He was too ashamed. He called the only person he thought still had a conscience. He called me. I was sitting in my study at the penthouse of the Pierre. The morning sun was streaming in over Central Park. I had a cup of coffee in one hand and the morning paper in the other. The headline was bold and satisfying. Fall of a fraud developer arrested at Gala. The phone on my desk buzzed. The caller ID said Corrections Department. I let it ring 3 times. Let him sweat. Let him think I wasn't going to answer. Then I picked up. "Hello," I said. Archie Brad's voice was a desperate rasp. "Archie, thank God. You have to help me. It is a nightmare in here. They put me in with criminals." "You are a criminal, Brad," I said, sipping my coffee. "You fit right in." No, listen. It was a mistake. The accounting errors. I can explain. My lawyer says if I make restitution, if I pay it back, they might drop the charges. But I need bail. The judge set it at $1 million. Flight risk, he said. Can you believe that? Believe. I can, I said. You ran from the bank. You ran from your house. You run from everything, Brad. Please, Archie, Brad begged. Just post the bail. I will sign whatever you want. I will sign over the company. I will leave the state. I just need to get out of here. I can't breathe in here. I leaned back in my chair. I looked at the photo on my desk. It was a picture of Caroline smiling on a boat years ago before she met him. She was smiling like that again this morning when she left to go look at apartments. Real apartments, not stage sets for a con man's ego. You want me to bail you out? I asked. Yes, Brad sobbed. Yes, please. We are family, Archie. I am your son-in-law. I thought about the dinner. I thought about the plate crashing to the floor. I thought about the way he looked at me with such pure, unadulterated contempt. He didn't want my help because he respected me. He wanted it because he still thought I was weak. He still thought he could manipulate the nice old postman. You want my help, I repeated. Yes, anything. Name your price. I remembered his words. They were burned into my memory. If you want dinner, lick it off the floor. It was the moment the mask fell. It was the moment he showed me his soul. I have a price, Brad, I said. What is it? He asked, hopeful. I will do it. Do you remember what you told me, Brad? At the dinner, when you knocked my food on the ground. There was a silence on the line. He remembered. Of course he remembered. I was drunk, Archie. I didn't mean it. You meant every word I said. You wanted me on my knees. You wanted me to degrade myself for your amusement. I am sorry, he whispered. I am sure you are, I said. But apologies don't pay bail. You want out of that cell. You want my money. Yes. Then here is my price, Brad. I leaned into the phone, my voice cold and final. You want bail. Lick it off the floor. I hung up the phone. I didn't slam it. I just placed it gently back on the cradle. The silence in the room was beautiful. It was the sound of a debt being paid in full. The circle was closed. He was exactly where he belonged. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Free. The salt air of the New York harbor tasted different than the air in the Hamptons. It was sharper, cleaner. It smelled of diesel and steel and hard work. It smelled like home. I stood at the end of Pier 17, the wind whipping my flannel shirt around my waist. I was wearing my old Red Wing boots, the ones with the scuff marks on the toes, but nobody here looked at me with disdain. The longshoremen nodded as they walked past. The engineers paused to shake my hand. They didn't see a retired postman. They saw the man who signed their paychecks and knew the name of every bolt in the hull of the ship towering above us. 6 months had passed since the night the lights went out at the pier. 6 months since the gavel fell on Brad Sterling's freedom. The silence that followed the chaos had been deafening at first, but slowly it had been filled with new sounds. The sound of honest laughter. The sound of plans being made, not schemes being hatched. I looked up at the massive vessel sitting in the dry dock. It was a Neo-Panamax container ship, one of the largest in the world. It was painted the signature navy blue of King Logistics. The letters on the bow were covered by a white canvas tarp waiting for the christening. "Ready, Dad?" a voice asked beside me. I turned to look at Caroline. She was wearing a hard hat and a high-visibility vest over her cashmere sweater. She held a bottle of vintage champagne in her hands, not to drink, but to break. She looked different. The shadows under her eyes were gone. The nervous tick of checking her phone every 2 minutes had vanished. She stood taller. "I was born ready," I said, smiling. "But this is your show." She took a deep breath. She looked at the ship, then back at me. "I still can't believe you named it after me," she said. "The Caroline K," I said, testing the name on the wind. "It has a nice ring to it. Much better than the Brad." She laughed. It was a full, throaty laugh that made the crane operators smile. "Brad," she said, shaking her head. "I got a letter from him yesterday. From the penitentiary." I stiffened. "What did he want?" "The usual," she said, shrugging. "He found God. He is writing a memoir. He wanted to know if the King Foundation would fund his legal appeal." "And what did you do?" I asked, watching her carefully. "I sent him a brochure for the prison library," she said. "I told him he should start reading about ethics." I chuckled. That was my girl. The spell was completely broken. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was the executive director of the King Foundation, an organization we had launched 3 months ago, with the funds recovered from Brad's liquidated assets and a substantial contribution from my own accounts. She was busy. She was helping small business owners who had been defrauded by predators like her ex-husband. She was funding financial literacy programs for seniors, so nobody would ever be in my position without the means to fight back. She was working 12 hours a day, and she had never looked happier. "It is time," Mr. King, the dockmaster, called out from the podium. We walked up the metal stairs to the christening platform. A crowd of 200 employees and press were gathered below. This time I wasn't hiding in the shadows. I wasn't wearing a disguise. I was standing in the open in my comfortable clothes, unapologetic about who I was. Caroline stepped up to the microphone. She didn't need notes. She spoke from the heart. She talked about resilience. She talked about the importance of building things that last, not just illusions that sparkle. She talked about legacy. I listened to her and realized that this was the wealth I had been trying to protect all along, not the money. The money was just numbers on a screen. This spirit, this strength, this was the real fortune. She grabbed the rope connected to the champagne bottle. "I christen thee the Caroline K," she shouted. "May she bring fair winds and following seas." She swung the bottle. It smashed against the steel hull with a satisfying explosion of glass and foam. The air horns blasted, shaking the pier. The canvas dropped, revealing the name in gold letters. The crowd cheered. I put my arm around her. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "We did good, Dad," she whispered. "We did good," I agreed. Later, as the sun began to dip behind the Manhattan skyline, painting the water in shades of orange and purple, we sat on a bench overlooking the harbor. The guests had left. The workers were packing up. It was just us. I looked at my hands. They were old hands, spotted and veined, but they were steady. The tremor was gone. "You know," Carolyn said, looking out at the new ship, "I used to be so afraid. I was afraid of Brad. I was afraid of being poor. I was afraid of what people thought. And now I asked." "Now," she said, picking up a pebble and tossing it into the water. "Now, and I know that the only thing to be afraid of is living a lie." I nodded. "That is the lesson, kiddo. The truth is heavy. It is hard to carry. But it is the only thing that keeps you grounded when the storm comes." We sat there for a long time watching the city lights flicker on one by one. I thought about the journey, the tugboat, the empire, the disguise, the betrayal, the redemption. I thought about Brad sitting in his cell, us dreaming of a life he hadn't earned. And I thought about myself sitting here on a wooden bench next to my daughter, feeling richer than I ever had in the boardroom. I had reclaimed my name. I had reclaimed my family. And most importantly, I had reclaimed the peace of knowing that no matter what clothes I wore or what car I drove, I was Archibald King, and nobody would ever push me around again. I stood up and stretched. My back cracked. "Hungry?" I asked. "Starving," Caroline said, standing up. "Where should we go?" "The Pierre, per se." I looked at her and grinned. "I know a great hot dog stand on the corner of 42nd, I said. "Best mustard in the city. $2. She laughed, hooking her arm through mine. "You are paying," she said. I patted my pocket where my wallet sat next to my old flip phone. "I think I can afford it," I said. We walked away from the water, leaving the ships and the empire behind us, heading into the city lights. Just a father and daughter going for dinner. No pretense, no secrets. Just the truth. My name is Archibald King. I am 70 years old. I have been a billionaire, and I have been a postman. I have been humiliated, and I have been vindicated. But tonight I am just a man walking with his daughter, and that is the only title that matters. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in my place. Would you have forgiven them? Would you have done it differently? I read every comment. Until next time, remember, the truth always wins. Stay strong. If there is one thing I want you to take away from my story, it is this: never confuse silence with weakness. Brad thought he could walk all over me because I didn't flash my wealth. He learned the hard way that the loudest person in the room is usually the most insecure. True power doesn't need to scream. It just needs to wait for the right moment. Don't let anyone make you feel small just because you choose to live simply. Your worth is defined by your actions, your integrity, and how you treat people when you think no one is watching. Stay true to yourself and let the truth be your shield. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of truth and redemption. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to hide who you really were to see someone's true colors? I'll be reading your stories.